Hi there, welcome back to Marky RC. Over the next two videos I'm going to be doing a full build of Tamiya's Super Hotshot. Absolutely awesome looking box art on this particular buggy. They do four variants of the Hotshot. The John Watanabe Hotshot 2, the normal Hotshot 2, the normal Hotshot, and then the Super Hotshot. They do a vintage version of this particular buggy, which is the Super Shot. They're quite hard to find now, so if I do find one, I'll be doing a restoration video on that. Normally pop up on eBay once in a while. In this particular kit, which I did the unboxing video 3 or 4 days ago, you actually get a GT tuned hopped up motor already in this and a full set of ball races. So I'll do this particular buggy 2 pages at a time from the manual. I'll lay the parts out. I'll give you a description of the parts, because a lot of these parts in the Hotshot are aluminium and are machined and are quite nice looking parts. Put it all together, the 2 pages, show you what it looks like, and then go through the manual in that manner. So I hope you're going to enjoy this build, but I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while. So let's get the manual out and start building. Right, here we have all the parts laid out now for pages 4 and 5. Which is building the rear gearbox and installing the motor. Like I said in the build video, you get a GT tune motor in this kit. No mention of it on the box, but awesome little motor for this particular buggy. Quite a good torque rating. I think they're about a 24-25 turn. I'll have to check on that. We've also got our rear gearbox housings, exceptionally hard plastic. I can't remember them ever being that hard on the original buggy. You get a choice of pinion gears, you get a 16 tooth and I think a 14 tooth, so you can change your gearing about, a bit more acceleration or a bit more torque. Steel out drives, steer gearbox joints, and same plastic gears that come in all Tamiya kits. Not sure if the plastic's the same as the original stuff. I wouldn't have thought so. It feels a little bit more flexy, but still pretty hard at the same time. And then I like to put all of the when you buy a Tamiya kit and you get part bag A, there'll be say 3 or 4 individual bags inside. I like to empty each bag individually into a little pot, and normally when you're building a kit, that pot does one stage of the build and so on throughout the manual. So I put all these parts together, and then I'll show you what these 2 stages of the model build look like. Right, here we have pages 5 and 6 put together. We've got the torque tune motor, all the gearboxes built. Got a bit carried away, was meant to show you the inside of that one, but I'll show you the inside of the front one. They're pretty much identical in terms of differentials. All steel out drives, all runs freely, and I normally disconnect my motors up once I've built a gearbox to a speed control, just to make sure that everything's running properly, nothing's binding or I haven't put it together properly, because there's nothing worse than when you put the model together and then you've got to take the whole thing apart again because something's not quite right inside a gearbox. They don't need to be drenched in the Tamiya grease, just a covering to keep the gears lubricated. So that's pages 5 and 6 complete, and then we've got pages 6 and 7 now where I've laid the parts out. Got red rear knuckles, rear gearbox, same again, really hard plastic. Rear wishbones, they're the same plastic, really hard, and the same with the front, the same with the rear top wishbones. They're made of that really tough plastic. Everything runs on bearings, all steel out drives, steel, the propeller, I'm not sure what you call that, the propeller axle thing that connects the front and rear gearboxes together. Got some aluminium bracing, and then you get 2 lengths of drive shafts in this kit. You get the black ones, which are the shorter ones, and then you get the silver, which are longer. Just keep note of that if you're building one of these, otherwise you're going to get something's going to end up binding up. You've got the chrome axles, pretty much generic in most Tamiya kits. They just vary slightly sometimes on the threaded length of the rod. And then a few aluminium strengthening brackets for the A-arms. And then the same, well, the normal plastics for Tamiya's gearboxes. Quite strong, but there is a little bit of flex in it, and they do last forever, and you can run brushless through them, no problems. And if it does all get a little bit too hot and something melts, the parts are so cheap because they use these gears in pretty much, I'd say 20% of Tamiya's cars. So I'll put all these parts together and I'll show you what pages 6 and 7 look like when they're added to the model. Right, here we have pages 6 and 7 completed. You've got the rear wishbones on, rear hubs, drive shafts, the anti-roll bar pickup points, as you can see there. And then we've got the gearbox, and as you can see inside there, the 3 planetary gears, the differential and the 2 other drive gears, steel shafts through the middle, fully ball raced. And there's the other half of the gearbox, one of the gears for the diff, fully ball raced, and then you've got ball racers in the out drives that drive the drive shaft to power the 4-wheel drive system. So just put those 2 gearboxes together, then I'll be on to pages 8 and 9, allow the parts out, and then show you what they look like when they're put onto the buggy. Alright, here we have the front gearbox put together now. As you can see, out drives are in, all running nice and smooth. So that was page 7, putting that together. Got the fully finished rear end of the buggy, absolutely no binding at all on there. And now we've got pages 8 and 9 to put together. We've got our front wishbones, lowers, uppers, same again, really tough plastic. Then we've got all our aluminium parts laid out for the front suspension system. I'll show you how this system works. It's quite unique to the hotshot buggies. I'm not sure if any other Tamiya cars use this particular way of holding the front balls and the front knuckles on. I'll show you how that all goes together. Everything's metal. Got the big ball studs there. And we've got the brass ball studs like in all Tamiya kits. Fully ball race, they all come in the kit. Got steel out drives. And then the front shafts, drive shafts, are the silver ones. I think they're a little bit longer if I remember rightly. So actually elsewhere you've got some strengthening brackets there which make the arms a bit stronger for the mounting point for the shocks. So I'll pop all these parts together, put them onto the front gearbox and show you what it looks like when it's all put together. I'll also show you in the system in which the front knuckles pivot, because it's quite a cool system and it is exceptionally strong. So I'll get these bits put together, show you that, and show you what it all looks like when it's put onto the model. Right, here we have the hotshot hub I've put together already. Ball joints, ball studs, sorry, screwed in, and then you get a metal washer or a metal plate and a round red disc. That red disc is directional, so on the disc you have the big side facing up and the small hole facing down. And on these metal plates you've got a smooth side, you've got a side that's where the holes have been punched. The holes, the rough side wants to be down and the big hole wants to be up on the red disc. Also Tamiya suggests greasing that top ball stud. I don't do that because after running these buggies, sand gets in there, sticks to the grease. It ends up where obviously it's moving back left and right and wears that disc out, and then your suspension goes all floppy. But what I do like to do is pre-thread these steering knuckles So I just apply a bit of the kit supplied grease to the end of the ball stud, and then when you screw it in, it goes in a lot easier. Go halfway, undo it, and then fully seat the ball stud. Then I take the ball stud back out. Now I've got a fully threaded hub, metal plate, rough side down, red disc, big hole facing up, and because that is threaded already, screws in very easy. Just make sure you pull that washer and that red disc so they're right up to the end of the ball stud, otherwise it will pinch the metal disc as you're screwing it in, like I've just done there. Fully seat it, and there you have it. So make sure you put those parts on the right way, like I say, as they are directional. So I'll put the rest of these parts onto the front gearbox and show you what all the front wishbones and steering hub looks like when they're all put together. Here we have pages 8 put together now. As you can see, steering knuckles are on the front there, wishbones all attached. Very little play in them. I don't think you could really do any, maybe a little bit of wiggle on the top arms, but nothing too major. Then we've got the rear section put together, and the chassis. On most Tamiya's cars, the driver figure is separate from the chassis, but on the hotshot range of vehicles, he's actually moulded into the top deck of the chassis. It says in instructions, because I like to do all my cars box art, to paint him white, but in the box art he is actually blue, so I'm going to leave him blue and do black seat belts. Then we've got the side pieces that basically go on the side there, hold the battery in. Still need to paint the driver's helmet. And then we've got the front guard, aluminium guard with the body mount on, and that basically pops in there when I've taken the tape off and finished painting. And that's all of page 9. So I'll get the driver figure painted up, get the helmet painted up, show you what it looks like with the chassis, front and rear gearboxes attached to the chassis, put the battery braces on, and then we're on to pages 10 and 11. Alright, here we have pages 10 put together. As you can see, front suspension's on, rear suspension. Also painted the driver figure and done him a pretty jazzy helmet. Got the front uprights which are aluminium, which can be retrofitted to all the other hotshot range of buggies if you want to go for twin shocks on the front instead of the single one. Makes it a bit more well, I suppose the suspension a lot better on the front. Got the aluminium plate to cover up the centre of the chassis. And then we've got Tamiya's, I'd say they're about a medium rate spring. And this super hotshot comes with a rear anti-roll bar. None of the other hotshots do, but I'm assuming you can retrofit that because they're the same chassis pretty much throughout the range. And then we've got a CVA short shock for the front, CVA longer shock for the rear, and the rear shocks have got a tiny little hole drilled in the top of the cap. So when you do the when you fill your shocks up with oil, it lets that little bit, if you've got a bit too much in it, lets that out the top there. The front shock caps don't have that, but I'm sure with a little Dremel you could drill a tiny little hole in there. It just makes your shocks uniform from front to back and from left to right, so one hasn't got more rebound than the other. They also get a selection of spacer blocks to make the shock firm or softer, and they're double sealed inside these particular CVAs with 2 sets of little red O-rings. And then we've also got a bladder that goes on the top, so you get a little bit more cushioning for the oil inside the shock. Stainless steel shafts for the front, they're black coated for the front, and just standard steel for the rear by the looks of things. Not sure why they do that. So I'll put these shock absorbers together, these CVAs together, and show you what it looks like when they're on the model. Right, here we have one of Tamiya's long CVA shocks put together. Should have really nice rebound on them. That's absolutely perfect. Also same with the front shocks. Really smooth. So I thought I'd just show you how I put my shocks together. It just makes them a little bit smoother. So basically I put the whatever size piston is going to go in. I always go for the middle of the range, so the 2-hole piston. Pop that inside. And then you go O-ring, spacer, O-ring, spacer. And what I like to do to make sure that that seats in there nicely, I'll get a bit of the supply shock oil, put a couple of dabs just on those rings, and then when you put the end cap on, it all slides in together nicely. Do it up, pushes all the O-rings in. And it gives it lubrication on the actual shock shaft. And then fill your shock up with the supplied shock oil, or if you want to make the shocks harder or softer, use different viscosity oils. I always use the Tamiya supply kit to start with. And then what I like to do is cycle the shock up and down a few times. It pushes a lot of the air bubbles out, and then you'll have to just do a little top up. Then put your bladder on. I like just to get a little bit of that silicone oil on the top of the bladder. Just makes it easier to put the top cap on. Apply the top cap. Make sure that's done up properly. Cycle that shock again. Lovely and smooth. And then you put an O-ring on which acts as a bump stop. And then a little flange nut on the bottom of the shock shaft. Then you add the spring. Then you add the bottom cap. And then a spacer block, which is a slimmer one. And there you have it. One Tamiya CVA shock, fully built. You've also got a couple of extra spaces if you need to make the shocks harder or softer. So I'll put these onto the buggy now and show you what they look like when they're all on. Right, here we have pages 11 now. All the front CVA shocks are on. No binding on either side. Like I said before, tiny little bit of wiggle on them, not a lot though. I've built the rear shocks. Next section of the build, page 12, is fitting servo saver, track rod ends, a couple of ball studs. They all fit into the bottom of this tub chassis that goes underneath the buggy. So I'll pop all those bits on and I'll show you what it looks like when all the servo and everything's in the vehicle. Here we have pages 13 built now. Got the servo in the chassis there, servo saver on the front, and the rod ends set to the correct length, which is in the manual. Because they're 1 to 1, you just line them up and you can't really go wrong setting them. And also, when we put the chassis together, I forgot to mention, we've got the steel propeller shaft in, or aluminium propeller shaft. On the original version of this buggy, that was like a wire, like sprung steel, but they've obviously upgraded that, makes it a lot stronger, no flex involved when you put sort of hot brush or brushless motors in. So I've got the last few parts still on this stage now, which is join the tub to the chassis. and then put the speed control in, which comes in the kit like a generic hobby wing style speed control. Runs just brushed only, and then I'll show you what it looks like when all those parts are on. Here we have page 15 built now. Got the bottom of the tub chassis screwed onto the actual top part of the chassis. Got the aluminium access panel in, which gives you access to all your electronics but keeps it sort of not watertight but stops all debris getting in. Got the battery wire coming out one side, which is a little relief cut in the chassis, and then we've got the motor wires that come out the other side for another relief cut in the chassis. Just need to wire them up. Looks pretty cool. They're quite a heavy buggy, but they do run really well. And we've got the roll cage, comes in two parts with the bars. I've just screwed that together already. That's really soft, nice soft flexible plastic. And we've got the FRP shock tower. We've got an FRP battery brace that holds the battery in the bottom of the chassis. And then it comes with some foam strips to stick on, stop your batteries getting scratched. We've also got the aluminium roof, the vents in the front, vents in the top. That's held on with a black zip tie. Nice aluminium bracket for the rear suspension. And quite the, well, probably the longest I think CVA shocks Tamiya make. With double oil seals in those. We've got all the shock hardware. So I'll pop all those bits on to the buggy and show you what it looks like when those parts are put on. Right, here we have the buggy now with the rear shocks on. No binding at all. I've also put the roll cage on and the aluminium roof bar. Like I said before, quite a weighty buggy. Driver figures all painted up. So pretty much now, apart from the underguard, the chassis is almost done. We've got the lovely chrome plated wheels to come on, and one of my favourite Tamiya tyres with the big spikes on. Fat for the back, thinner ones for the front. Huge front bumper to stop anything getting broken in the front suspension if you have a crash. And then we've got a underguard that protects the underside of the buggy from scratches and twigs and stuff going up inside. And then we've got the front bash, sort of front bash guard. So and then you don't get hexes with hotshots or some of other Tamiya's buggies, like the fast attack buggies. You get one of these triangles, which has basically got the hex built into the back, and then when you put it in the wheel, it engages with the holes inside the wheel. So you can see the red sticking through there. So I'll pop all these bits on and that'll be the chassis completed. Right, here we have the Super Hotshot chassis completely finished now. As you can see, got the gold wheels on, which look absolutely awesome. Also got the big Tamiya front bumper, which totally protects the entire front suspension on this buggy. Underneath we've got all the under tray and the front skid guard, which will stop any damage, and it makes so it doesn't get hooked up, completely smooth underneath. Also put the whip aerials on. They look really cool with the flags on the top. Really nice plush suspension. What's it like for bouncing? Yeah, it's got a bit of it's not solid. Feels like nice and supple. Really good fun build, really strong buggies, and in the kit you do get the bearings and the GT tune motor like I said before. Try to keep the wiring as neat as possible. So this is part one, complete chassis build. Part two will be painting the body and putting the decals on, and then I'll show you in part two what the Super Hotshot looks like fully finished. And then if it ever stops raining, I'll give it a run around the garden or take it down the park. But in terms of Tamiya buggies, I think these look absolutely awesome. And this, I needed this one. This is the final one because I've got all 4. Like I said, I think in the beginning of the video, it would be nice to get a vintage super hotshot, but they are hard to come by now. But overall, really good fun build, and even for a first time buggy, if you're mechanically minded and don't have any issue like following instructions, you can't really go wrong. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you like and subscribe, and hope to see you in part 2 for the body painting, doing the decals, and showing what the super hotshot looks like fully finished. I'll see you later. Bye.